Morning. All right, who's blurry-eyed like me? I hope everyone had an amazing time yesterday and enjoyed whatever they did in the evening. I think we had a really good program last night, from vigils and film, open mic, session, music, and I don't know what else. And I hope you weren't affected by the flooding in Oxford. So, before I begin, I need to address an issue about inequalities. So, several of our speakers couldn't be here or can't join online because of inequalities. Our Indigenous person cannot join because they're expected to get up in the middle of the night and drive somewhere to have access to Wi-Fi. And for me, that's not acceptable. Another person is trying to join online, but they're stuck in the middle of the Amazon where it's been raining heavily. So if they are able to join us, they will. And then the other speaker was supposed to be here in person, but thanks to our heavy borders, couldn't get a visa to be here in person. And we're hoping their connection holds as well. So when we think about this work, when we think about food sovereignty and food justice, we also need to think about the other justice issues. So today we're joined by Paula Joya from ECVC, La Via Campesina, Milliam Bailey from AFSA, and Joe Kamal from Land Workers Alliance online. We really hope Ferdinand Wafula and Ariel Molina. So I'm just going to go straight to Paula and ask you to sort of contextualize and set the tone about food sovereignty, please.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yeah, great. So good morning. First of all, thanks again to the Oxford Real Farming Conference for inviting La Via Campesina and the European Coordination Via Campesina to be part of this conference and to, together with you have a fruitful exchange, on the issues we have been working on and, keep building this movement because we need a lot of unity, and what you have been doing here in Oxford is definitely also important in that movement, so it's great to be here. And I think when it comes to food sovereignty, we cannot speak about La Via Campesina because I don't know if everybody's aware, but La Via Campesina is the global peasants movement that was created in 1993, and it is a movement which in the 90s brought this vision of food sovereignty to the world, and it was for the first time a clear alternative to what was the main credo at that time, food security, the Green Revolution, and so on. So it was not about only denouncing, but also bringing about proposals for change. And food sovereignty is a vision to democratize our food systems centering the ones who are really in the heart of food production, also in decision-making, for example. No? And since we launched, or since we announced this vision, or we shared with the world this vision in 1996, a big movement started to germinate from that. A movement for food sovereignty built up from different constituencies. I mean, this happened in Rome during the World Food Summit, in Rome, actually in the Alternative Food Summit that took place in 1996 in Rome. And this movement, was joined by different other constituencies, within the food sector, and a platform called IPC, which stands for the International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty, was created. And today, the IPC is the world's largest alliance, uniting all kinds of small-scale food producers, including peasants, but also artisanal fishers, pastoralists, herders, nomads, communities, indigenous peoples, indigenous organizations, and so on. Also, urban food insecure communities are there, and there are some also NGOs working on these issues that support the IPC. Today, the IPC counts with over 6,000 national organizations and 300 million of small-scale food producers worldwide. And why I'm telling you that? Because the IPC, La Via Campesina announced, or La Via Campesina brought this vision of food sovereignty in 1996, but this vision has been enlarged and has been enriched, together with all these other sectors. About 10 years later, 2007, when the IPC organized the first Nyéléni Forum in Mali, and where this idea or this vision of food sovereignty has been further developed and defined with the richness of all these different perspectives. And later on, 2015, the IPC organized again in Mali another forum, Nyéléni Forum, called on agroecology. And again, it was a milestone to shape this movement together. And the IPC has been working quite autonomously, but also, among other things, also having influence also in institutional spaces. And the IPC, had also some achievements over this past almost 30 years, 20 to 30 years of existence. For example, in the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, we had the impact that we managed to co-shape a partnership framework between the civil society organizations and governments, in the FAO, recognizing on one hand the autonomy of social movements, but also the importance of them, importance of these actors in shaping policies and programs, on food security. Furthermore, the IPC was also key when during the World Food Crisis, 2009, 2008, 2009, democratizing the Committee on World Food Security, which is a major space of policy making, the CFS. It's a major space, the foremost intergovernmental space, an inclusive space where the civil society and indigenous peoples organizations have a say. We are not begging for space to speak, but we have a legitimate space there, to co-shape policies regarding food, agriculture, and nutrition. So, and finally, I think for La Via Campesina, a big achievement that we had in alliance with all these other movements was the approval of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas, first in the Human Rights Council in Geneva and later on in the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Defining what a peasant is, defining peasants as political subjects and also as right holders. So we had different achievements, and all of them are part of this understanding of what food sovereignty is. However, the global context has changed over the past years. We are in a moment of increased climate change. We are in a moment where, right-wing forces are coming stronger and stronger in different regions of the world, including here in Europe. In Germany, we have a major risk coming in the past weeks now, where the right-wing party is trying to co-opt some kind of farmers' movements, demanding also the rights for farmers in Germany. I live in Germany. We have a context of increased wars and armed conflicts and so on. And alongside with all this, we have a context in which the United Nations democracy is being dismantled, while corporations are trying to co-opt it. Decisions are biased, conflicts of interest are not regulated, and there is no accountability. So in that context that we are now, the IPC has been analyzing that we need to unify struggles. We have to bring the food sovereignty struggle, the food sovereignty movement together with the climate change movement, the climate justice movement, with feminist movements, movements working for social and solidarity economy, movements working for peace, workers' movements, and so on. We have to unify because the crisis is systemic. So we cannot, continue working only on our own, bubbles. We have to come together. Because all these movements have been demanding radical system transformations. So we can only do it if we do it also together. And we believe, as IPC or as food sovereignty movement, that our experience as movement can be put in the service of these chains, and to converge all these different movements and tie these new alliances with these different movements I've just enumerated. So concretely, this means that we want to work closer and stronger with different movements working which shared our vision of being anti-racism, being anti-extractivism, being anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, anti-debt movements, but also movements who share the values that, we want a world built on democracy, a world built on equity, on peace, on equality, on inclusivity, and so on. Therefore, the IPC is calling, and it's the first time we are saying this here in presence, because the past years we have been only online, in the conference, but the IPC is calling for a new so-called Nyéléni process. So Nyéléni was the name of this historical forums that I mentioned, that the IPC organized in 2007 and then later in 2015, and which were really milestone moments for the food sovereignty movement. So we are calling now for a new Nyéléni global forum, but which is no longer only for the organizations or for the movements which are already working on the issue of food sovereignty. So it's an invitation for other movements to join and to, renew our understanding of, systemic strategies for systemic transformations, bringing all these different perspectives, these intersectional perspectives, and to develop together strategies and visions for transformations. This forum is planned to take place next year in India, and we chose India because, the farmers' movement, I don't know if you followed what happened, in the middle of the pandemic, there was a massive movement of farmers going to the streets in India in order to demand the withdrawal of some farm bills that the government passed that would just mean that really the destruction of peasantry in India, which is still the major farming sector in the country. And they won. They won not alone. They won because, they built alliances also with different movements in the country. So for us in the IPC, the Indian peasants movement is an inspiration of what we want to do at global scale. So we are going to India in 2025 with the next Nyéléni Forum. And for that, it is important that at regional level, we use the first half of 2024, to prepare, to develop our regional, analysis and also demands and proposals that will then go to that forum 1 year later. So the first half of 2024, and especially here in Europe, we are planning to have a kind of regional Nyéléni coming together moment, probably around May, and to organize the European, and actually Europe and Central Asia inputs, because we work as one region here. And hopefully, this process in the end will really re-energize the food sovereignty movement, strengthen it. We will also foster solidarity and create a new momentum for grassroots organizations and for people to be really heard. And finally, to give us a common direction to give us as social movements, but also as society as a whole, a common direction for the years to come in order really to change the system of oppression, the system of war, of death, of greeds that can no longer be sustained. So that's my first message, trying to give you an overview what we have been working on at global level, and I hope out of this room here today, we have a lot of, vibration to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paola. So if I come to Million and Joe, and hopefully we have either Ariel or Ferdinand online, why is unity important in the construction of food sovereignty, and what are the challenges in Africa and here in the UK?
Yeah, can we give this to Ferdinand?
Okay, Ferdinand, are you with us? Brilliant. Oh. The blue circle of doom. Joe, do you want to go ahead whilst Ferdinand reconnects?
Yeah. So when I was given this question about unity, the word solidarity sprang to mind straight away. I was lucky enough to be at the La Via Campesina International Conference last year in December, which is the Global Peasants Movement Conference. And something that struck me while being there. There were a lot of like transformational things that I experienced, but one of them was that the realization that although I'd had a theoretical or philosophical understanding of what internationalism meant in my head, like cerebrally, I hadn't experienced it in an embodied way. And attending the conference helped that like cerebral understanding kind of sink in to like my heart and my body. And in that shift was like a real deeply grounded understanding of what international solidarity and cross-movement solidarity means. To me, it seems that we are in need of, there's this phrase that keeps coming up in our movement, which is like, we need a movement of movements. And I totally agree. I think that is what is necessary and what is required. What is needed is an understanding that all of the struggles that we are facing are like deeply, deeply interlinked. So whether you're coming at it from patriarchy or colonialism or imperialism, like all of these things are interconnected. And in the UK context, I think sometimes we struggle to understand food sovereignty as an issue that intersects across all radical struggle. Sometimes it's siloed into the food and farming sphere as though those things are separate to revolutionary change. And they're not. They are deeply entrenched and interlinked with that. So those are my initial thoughts on unity.
Thank you, Jo. Ferdinand, glad you're back. So same question, why is unity important in the construction of food sovereignty, and what are the challenges in Africa?
Well, thank you, and it's a great honor to be in this conference online, and I work with the smallholder farmers in Western Kenya, and unity is very much important in this movement because food has a common language, and all of us eat the world over. And the threats that we have on producing our food, and especially for the smallholder farmers who are severely affected by hunger and food scarcity, food insecurity, and unfavorable policies, it makes it important to call for unity and to speak this universal language about food.
Thank you. And so what are the opportunities for making food sovereignty a lived reality in Africa? What do you think?
Yeah, there are great opportunities, especially that local farmers have resources and they are ecological, and that governments have forgotten about these local ecological resources, and that, for instance, we are part of a healthy soil, healthy food practices, 15 centers that are hosted and supported by the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, and we are putting these ecological resources into practice so that farmers can be able to produce food, fertilize their soils, enrich their soils using biofertilizers, and they can also use ecological means to protect their plants so that they can have healthy food. And this has taken root, and it's now being recognized at the local level with the county governments, and they are seeing a sense in developing local policies that can support farmers' rights to make their own fertilizers and diversify their crops and improve their food status. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Coming back to you, Million. So how is AFSA contributing to this? So I know the Healthy Food, Healthy Soils program. I was fortunate to visit one in Malawi and one in South Africa. Could you tell us more about what AFSA is doing around food sovereignty in Africa?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paula, for organizing this session. It was a great session. I would like to speak to why we call ourselves the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. I think we had a discussion back in 2009 before we name it. Why not food security or some other thing rather than food sovereignty? So we had a discussion, 2 years of discussion, in 2009 and 2010. So what won us is the ownership of the food system and also the cultural appropriateness of the food system, because culture is very critical for Africa. And also producing food without impacting the environment. That context was very, very much important for Africa. It spoke to us. And to support what my brother said is, I think there are a number of opportunities. Now, unfortunately, crisis sometimes can be an opportunity. So the war between Ukraine and Russia has opened up a lot of eyes in Africa, governments included. And they are saying that, why do we starve when people somewhere fight? Because the cost of fertilizers and oil and fuel and everything has risen up, and communities are still suffering. And when this is happening, what are we going to do? And also the pandemic, the COVID pandemic and future pandemics is a very, very opportunity, unfortunately. And the climate crisis was also, people are saying that I think we need to produce our own food. So food sovereignty is very much critical. That was an opportunity. And culture is still thriving in Africa. It's still there. So the cultural appropriateness. Yesterday I was talking about the campaign that we have. My food is African. It's a very, very strong campaign. It rings bell to everyone. Everybody is going into that bus, So people like it because the food is there already. We don't have to import food. So we have to win the next generation. The other opportunities. Close to 70% of Africans are youth. It's a young continent. And they are awakened now, They need only a little spark, You can speak to them. You can make sure that there is intergenerational transfer of knowledge. And that's why we are organizing a number of events in Africa. Now, as AFSA, Ferdinand in his community, and everybody is organizing events. Seed events, food events, and also, the number of celebrations of our culture related to food. That is also an opportunity in transferring traditional ecological knowledge, knowledge about food from generation to generation. So that's continuing, and it's a very good opportunity, and it's one of the things that we are doing under My Food is African campaign. And seed, as you know, is central to our food system. And we are losing our seed very fast, the diversity in our seed. Incredible diversity. I come from Ethiopia. We have more than 100 varieties of wheat, more than 60 varieties of barley, sorghum, you name it, teff, So, but that diversity is affected now, and it's going to be affected also because we are, they are coming with the laws and regulations, seed laws and regulations, which actually prevent farmers from storing and planting and sharing their seeds and selling their seed. That is also really hugely impacting our food system, because the center of our system is a diversity in our seeds. So we have developed a framework which is called Farmers Managed System. It's a framework. We wanted to convince our governments to take up as a regulation instead of adapting other regulations like UPOV 91 or something, you know. So that's one of the activity. And land rights, land rights to women. Women is a very, very important agenda. We are working with women. We are working in countries to advocate for the access to land for women. This is very much important. And recognizing the value of women also in the food system. That is very much critical. That's what we are doing. And we have a youth wing. AFSA has a youth wing. We are going to organize in October this year 1,000 youth summit, where we are going to bring 20 youth per country to a place where we are going to discuss on food sovereignty and agroecology of food system. And this summit would be a summit of solutions. That's what we are planning to do it. So it's a lot of work is being done. And as you know, territorial markets are also very, very critical for food sovereignty. And we have studied territorial markets. And we are working in some African countries on recognition and investment on territorial markets. So a lot of things are happening in AFSA. Thank you.
Brilliant. So I think, in UK context, it would be sort of access to land and land reform, land rights, local food, local markets, sort of involving the youth more. If I could come back to Joe, what are the challenges to build the food sovereignty movement in the UK?
Yeah, let me just get out my really long list. So we've got the rise of the far right and the general move to the right wing in politics over the past 10 or so years, including within our left-wing parties. The monopoly of discourse on food security and food banks, though this is kind of changing, there's still like the general sense is this liberal ideology of food security that has been named. There's a hostile policy environment for agroecological farming in particular, though that maybe is also shifting with the environmental land management scheme, hopefully. The rising poverty, the cost of living crisis, and these like crises of capitalism that are often framed as individual problems rather than systemic problems. And I think the UK narrative is very successful in doing that and creating that as an individual issue. For the UK foreign policy actively and consistently expands the colonial project in relation to food and land. Foreign policy is in nowhere near working towards food sovereignty, is doing the exact opposite. UK companies are actively complicit in land grabs and export of agrochemicals. The agroecology movement itself is really depoliticized, although we are having more and more discussions about the systemic links with capitalism and colonialism within the movement. I think regenerative agriculture is sometimes seen as like separate from social justice, and so is agroecology. And sometimes even naming anti-capitalism is a taboo concept in some spaces. Yeah, I've experienced that kind of naming that food sovereignty is like deeply anti-capitalist, and people being like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" The depoliticization of food in general, the colonial disconnection from land that started here, so it's like really deeply entrenched, and we have a general population that is extremely disconnected from food and land. Supermarket monopolies and control over supply chains. There's so much more, guys. There's a real lack also of diversity in that agroecology movement as a whole, which means that there's a lack of diverse perspectives in the movement, which I think robs us of a richer move towards a better future. And one that I added in this morning, there's a bit more personal, is more of a personal opinion, is that I think we're also quite far off as a movement from understanding the spiritual as political, and understanding that, kind of bringing in the, like, if everything is connected, then all our struggles and our oppressions are interconnected too, and bringing in that if everything is sacred, then food is sacred and land is sacred, and we're not really there at all. And I think that is also a really big barrier, but that's just my little opinion.
I think you missed a couple sessions, all right, because there were sort of spiritual aspects to the conference where we're looking at bringing those diversity of traditions here and from further afield. So far it's in the fringe, and hopefully it will become more of the general conference. Coming back to Ferdinand, how are farmers and other organizations in Kenya participating in the Nyéléni process?
Well, I believe the activities and the events that are being organized through AFSA and the networks that we belong to, especially issues around seed and the sovereignty and the liberation around food issues, the discussion about how farmers should be able to be at the front line of controlling their own food systems is quite key. And we have mobilized farmers to participate in national exhibitions, regional exhibitions, and this is ringing some bell in the ears of our policymakers and our politicians. And we are seeing some change, that farmers are now able to say, these are some of the seeds that we own. And if you do some legislation and we have more corporate control, corporate power on some of these resources, then we are going to be marginalized, and we cannot actually have food sovereignty. And so we're seeing that when farmers are also saving this and bringing this conversation at the national level, then we still have to work hard and make sure that voices is translated into policy, and this policy should also be coherent with the needs and aspirations of other movements in Africa and globally.
Thank you. And Million, who else is AFSA connected to in Africa around the Nyéléni process?
The Nyéléni process, it is conceived of, as Paul was saying, before COVID. And I remember participating in a meeting, IPC coordinated meeting. Also the US Food Sovereignty Alliance also participated in that meeting. It was a Zoom meeting. Yeah. But because of the challenges that is thrown at everyone because of COVID, we couldn't push it. But at the beginning of this year, in May, we were invited to participate in a meeting that was organized by the IPC. Polo was there. So the chairperson of AFSA, by the way, who is a farmer, was also there, and he is participating. But AFSA is increasingly opening up its door to other movements also. In September, a year before, in 2022, we organized a big meeting, and it's a climate meeting, so we invited, all actors who are working on climate, not necessarily members of AFSA. When we were organizing the agroecological entrepreneurship, we invited some more actors, So at the regional level, we are inviting more actors who are not necessarily working on food system. So this goes with the spirit of the Nyéléni, as Paulo is saying, and hopefully when Africa participates in Nyéléni, we might also bring other actors. But at the continental level, we have started working with them because the struggle is global, as you know, so it's very important.
Yeah. Joe, could you tell us how you think people here in the UK can engage in the movement and outcomes in the Nyéléni global process?
Yes, I'm biased, but I think join the Landworkers Alliance, for one. I think another really crucial part of engagement is political education. And again, that was something that became really clear to me at the conference in Colombia, but also in my past 2 years working at the LWA. Political education is key in raising consciousness and helping us to understand this interlink of struggle. So that feels really crucial. And I think for the LWA in particular, what we'll be taking to the Nyéléni process is the prioritization of bringing in racial justice and queer justice and all of these things into the agroecology movement.
Thank you. And Paula, do you want to add anything more?
Yes, because Milan said something that I think it would be also fair to share here, because as I said, there were already some sessions on the Nyéléni process here in the Oxford Real Farming Conference in the last, I think, 2 years or so. So this process already started, a while ago, but, because of the pandemic, we, had to slow down the speed, we see on one hand, we see the urgency to come together and to organize, but on the other hand, there is also the reality, in which people on the ground could really not thinking about organizing globally in a moment that people were actually striving to survive in a pandemic context, right? So we had to slow down and, to wait, the movement to stand up again and to be able to, connect and organize again. So that's why, what was originally actually foreseen to 2023, we had to postpone it a bit. So this is one thing I wanted to share, because some people who might have attended the sessions in the previous years said, wow, but they are still speaking about this. Yeah, we are still speaking about this because it's even more urgent now. But, that was a bit the reasons for that. And the other thing is how I think this question on how to engage, because sometimes, you speak at this global level and it's not really, accessible, people don't know how to engage. And for us, it's of course, not, the entire movement all over the world will be able to go to India, this is clear. But, we have to see this process not based on persons, not based on personalities, but based on, delegates who are, getting the mandate from their territories, from their national contexts and movements to convey the message. Therefore, it is extremely important to organize at national level, at territorial level. So there are delegates going, for example, to these regional meetings that I spoke about, like here in Europe and Central Asia around May this year. It's not yet 100% set where and when it will take place. But it's important also to create this momentum here. And I think this conference offers the opportunity to, start organizing for that. So at least, here from the different territories in the UK, you can, organize to have a common voice, a common analysis and vision. Because, in the end, it's also, there are a lot of diversities of voice, of analysis and so on. And it's important to come together, to bring them together to bring a unified analysis somehow to the regional meeting. And also understanding that the Oxford Real Farming Conference, it's just like a tiny piece of, this how to say, actors that we want to engage here, So it would be important that out from here, there is also, people taking care of connecting, I don't know, to the climate justice movement in the UK, to other social justice movements, feminism, queer feminist movements, and so on, workers, food insecure communities, and so on. So that before May, you manage to have a space to discuss together about, what is the message and the strategies that from here you want to propose first to the regional space, and then from there, going to the global one.
Thank you, Paula. So we have a short video that we want to show you, and then we'll go into Q&A and have a small discussion about next steps. So, do we have any questions? All right. 1, 2, 3. So this lady first. Sorry to be pointed.
Hello.
Wait for the microphone.
I wanted to just point out a couple of things which are happening in India in particular. You mentioned India, where the extreme right-wing government is supporting natural farming, which is, so the states are supposed to convert all their farmers to natural farming and agroecological approach. Now, I've been researching that in one particular state in North India, and what's missing during the trainings that take place by the extensionists and farmers to farmers is the consciousness raising. So that element of food sovereignty is missing, that this is your right. No government is going to teach, its subjects to overthrow itself, to overthrow that government. And that's what it boils down to. So in that respect, even though an agroecological approach is being promoted, the element of food sovereignty or that vision is missing. How does one then address that? And this is being promoted, these natural farming movements in India are being promoted greatly by the FAO, for example. It's their example of good practice.
Does anyone want to take that? Ferdinand or Millian? I think Ferdinand.
Yeah, thank you. We have been part of a learning process together with Indian colleagues on the natural farming. And I think the thought around patriarchy and raising conscious is important. And this goes hand in hand with policy change. And it's just important to note that issues around agroecology as a practice, as a movement, and even as a science is growing. And I think these are some of the missing links that we also borrowing and learning, that we need to start with conscious raising, awareness raising from the grassroots about the right to food and the right to local resources, and that the local people can be able to define and design their own food systems. I think it's an important observation, and we need to factor this in as we learn from other movements. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Paula and Lilian?
No, I am not so knowledgeable about what is happening in India in terms of the government supporting the natural farming practice, so I cannot speak about this directly. But what, for me, it's important to highlight is that, food sovereignty is a vision that came from the movements and not from governments and not from academicians. So it's a people's vision, and definitely it's not a right-wing one, no. But indeed, what we see is that, right-wing forces are somehow co-opting our concept. There is this risk. In Germany, the program put forward by the right-wing party in the last elections, they had food sovereignty in. So that indeed there is the risk of cooptation of our, of our concept, but not of our understanding, what food sovereignty is. And we have to, to struggle and to defend what sovereignty, was defined by the ones who coined this concept, who coined this vision. And definitely it's not a vision about a food system with closed borders. No closed borders for humans, closed borders for animals, closed borders for produce. No, it's not about closing our markets, but it's as Ferdinand said, it's about like that peoples have the right to define their own food systems. So in some contexts, it might need international trade. No, but the question is how this international trade looks like. It's not about closing the markets only for products produced by the ones from the place and so on. No, so I think the ones who claim to be from the place, because a lot of migrants are also from there. They are part of the society and so on. So they have also a place to play or a role to play in that food system here, for example, or in Germany. So I think it's important for us to have this clarity. Although right-wing forces are co-opting, the concept of food sovereignty, it's not what food sovereignty originally was meant to be, and we have to defend this.
Lilian?
Yeah, I think this is at the heart of the food sovereignty question. It's not a very easy question, I think. Because when you say sovereignty, at what level are we talking about? Is it at the country level? Is it country level food sovereignty? Is it the district level? Whatever level you have in your own country. Is it a village level? Is village level food sovereignty possible? Because it would mean that that community would have every right to say no to so many things that are happening. Can they say that in the current context, wherever in the world it is? And even in agroecology, we all say that it stands on these 3 feet, on practice. Mostly when we talk about food sovereignty and agroecology, we talk about the practice side of agroecology. Sometimes it falls into input substitution, agroecology input substitution. You're not using agrochemicals, but now you are using organic material, then you are agroecology. You see? But it's it's also a social movement. Why do we say it's a social movement? Why social movement? It's a very important question. It's the least discussed part of agroecology. So my only answer will be, it is a process. You know, you can't have food sovereignty as it is conceived, as is implied right now, especially in countries which are right wing, you know. So it's a process. Let's let that naturalization of the food system start, but slowly and surely we move into that question of controlling the market, you know. That's why these territorial markets are key, one of the key things, one of the very, very important things. They are important for circular economy. Also, they are places closer to people that they can influence, you know. So it's a process.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, just to echo that the consciousness raising has to happen from the grassroots, like has been said. And sometimes the like into the natural farming can then be the first step into more radical ways of thinking and being. So, yeah. But yeah, I agree with what everyone has said so far.
Okay, we had a couple questions on this side. And
first of all, thanks to the speakers and for all the organising and great work you're doing. It's really appreciated. It's kind of riffing a bit on the last question, so I hope it's not too similar. But just given the level of crisis and urgency we face and the threat of land grabs and all the things we're talking about, I was just wondering, because there's obviously this tension or this tricky balance that everyone's trying to navigate between reforming existing, you know, policy and working with legislation and this more radical dismantling of the system of capitalism, which, Joe, as you said, is like inherently food sovereignty must be anti-capitalist. So I guess, I mean, you kind of tried to already answer, you know, there's all these different ways that that's been approached, but are there any examples of really great work happening on a bioregional level that's maybe not, you know, that's not directly working with policymakers, that is more on that radical edge of like trying to dismantle from the ground up? Are there great examples or inspirational things that we can take ideas from, I suppose, that aren't necessarily working within the nation state? I'd be interested in that.
okay, does anyone want to take
I can try, and I think it's a quite obvious example, and I don't know if it is like what you were expecting, but you know, also as part of this movement, we are bringing the social and solidarity economy movement to that. You know, and you know, I believe that here in the conference there are some sessions on community-supported agriculture, which for me it is, you know, coming from this solidarity economy perspective, you know, where it's not like food you're not putting a price on a food, but it's much more like about, you know, creating an environment where farmers can produce, communities can eat, you know, and disconnecting price from a specific product, you know. And I think this is already anti-capitalist, you know, because it's not like, you know, this also breaking down this. It's a pity that Ariel is not here with us, because Ariel is coming from Urgency, which is the global network for community-supported agriculture farms and organizations. So I feel like responsible for bringing this, you know, because I mean, he could explain it very much better than I do, but you know, it's yeah, also understanding the issue of, you know, sharing risks as well, that, you know, not the farmers are responsible alone, no? I mean, climate changing is affecting all of us, so it would not be fair that farmers are the ones who have to pay alone for losses in the production, because if in a certain year there are floods, or in the other year there are droughts, and so on, no? So we are all co-responsible for that, and for me this is anti-capitalist. It's just one example.
Yeah, I would attempt to give an example from Kenya, and I think this is where the word transitions comes in, that there are counties in in the country. Agriculture has been devolved, and there are counties that have now embraced agroecology, and we now have just the first county that has put an agroecology policy in place last year. And the county in which I work, our organization and farmers is called Vihiga in Western Kenya, is following suit. We already have a draft agroecology policy. And the discussion and conversation is around transition, so that we're not doing, and some farmers, and not everybody is endowed with some of these resources, ecological resources or ecological-based resources. And there are those businesses that thrive on the agrochemicals. So the conscious raising and transitions and how these mechanisms should work is actually coming into play. And it's a process that we are engaged in, and we're learning together with the other movements and sharing feedback. And hopefully we will be able to navigate and get into some safe space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear us? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just one comment around India. I kind of 100% disagree with you because I'm not sure. I need to see your details. We are doing farm in India for 16 years, South India. Government never interferes anything. They may help us on certifications or export, import, those kind of stuff. I would like to listen to you more on that. Coming to the right wing, left wing, India, we have only one wing now. There's no left wing. So let's not go to politics. It's not really about the government. One of the things in India, we always decentralized. We don't care about government. We do our best. That's it. And yes, government should not interfere, like farming bills, you mentioned about it, the 3 farming bills they did, and just push back. It just happens, just the flow of the wind kind of thing. It cannot, nobody can stand against peasants. Sorry, I don't want to use the word peasants. We are really powerful. India is the case, same thing. Government cannot do anything. Yes, part of the globalization of the last 30 years, we've done so many things of the, people call revolution, IT, this and that, but still there are many issues, fundamental issues, which is happening, and we are trying to do our best. That's my comment on that. I'm happy to look at in details on North India, but I'm doing South India, Tamil Nadu and other places. It's quite very easy in the sense, nobody interferes, honestly, I can tell you. And we are living as more than 100,000 farmers, very much connected. There are issues with the market. When you go to market, you can't sell it and things like that. But apart from that, government will not interfere. That I can guarantee you that. I can tell you a living example of that. And only one question to probably Joe, I think, for the UK. So we are trying to do farm in India, very good, simple, sustainable, not profitable, it's fine. But when you try to do in the UK, I'm here for the last 23 years now, very hard for any farmers to do in the UK. I understand biggest monopoly from this supermarket mindset. How do we even do that? I mean, it's not straightforward, but it's doable. I mean, for example, in my case, very simple, you just have small holdings and try to do it myself, and I become self-reliant. And for example, in India, we pay £2 council tax. Everything is there. We produce our own water, food, energy, everything. Absolutely fantastic. Think about in the UK, how much energy will we be paying, how much water will we be paying. Now they're thinking about increasing water bill now. It's unbelievable, right? I mean, extraction is charged to the consumers, people. I don't know, it's quite complex issue here. Too much centralization, too much control. How do you get around that? And do you have a working framework? And how do you do that?
I really wish I had a clear answer for you. As a farmer myself, yeah, I am like constantly asking myself these questions of like, how do we make this sustainable? Like, how do we, yes, we're in this profession because we love it and we're passionate about it, but so many people are burning out because it doesn't work financially or because it's too much work physically. Like for so many reasons, farming in the UK can become unfeasible. And there are farms that do make it work and are successful. And I don't know what their secrets are. I think my understanding is that a lot of the time money comes in through grant funding, which is a whole other problematic area in itself. But for a lot of farms in the UK, that is like a lifeline. But also, like, I think that there are models that are coming in newly that kind of shift the dynamic of how a farm is run and how a farm is financed. Yeah, so there are examples, but I don't know if I have like a definitive answer for you. Other than I am aware that there's a campaign for a universal basic income for farmers, which I think maybe is that golden ticket, but I don't know how far away we are from that. Does anyone else want to speak to that, Dee?
Don't ask me questions before midday.
Okay.
Do we have any questions online or from the balcony? No? Yeah? Okay. All good.
Hello, everybody. My name is Morgan, also from Via Campesina. I want to say that I think food sovereignty, it's also and mainly about the centrality of small-scale food producers. It's about the fact that it's a reality right now that in the world, 70% of the food produced is produced not by the big agribusiness, it's produced by us. It's not obvious, I'm French, it's not obvious in France, it's not obvious in the UK, but at the global level, we, the peasants, we, the small-scale food producers, we produce the food that the people need. And we do this without any support from the governments, almost any support, because the governments in the UK, in France, but also in most of the countries, they support the big agribusiness. They support the people who are grabbing the land. They support the WTO and free trade policies. And we are claiming we want the governments and the states and the public policies to work for the people, to make sure that we can provide healthy food for the people. Normally, these guys should work for us, for the people. That's what we're claiming. That's democracy. And this is the reason why I don't think that we should stop claiming fair public policies. And it's working, even if it's difficult to see it in Western Europe. But, for example, in Mali, the farmers' organization just won a fantastic new land law, giving the right for local communities to decide who has the right to use land. And land is not private in Mali. Similarly, in India, what they defended is a system of market where it's not money deciding or the market deciding about the price for food, but there are minimum support prices, public stocks defining the price so that small-scale farmers can make a decent livelihood out of their production, and also consumers can buy food at affordable prices. So that's what we are defending. Public policies working for the people, working for the peasants, and also working for the people, in particular for the working class. And I think that and there are good examples, mostly in the southern countries, where people's movements are winning good politics. In Cuba, if we have huge agroecological movements, it's because there are public policies in support for agroecology in Cuba. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so strong. So we need to continue claiming for such public policies. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think we have a question here. Anyone? No?
Thank you. It was just a quick comment on what the sister from Germany said. I'm sorry I missed some of the speeches, but one of the very good examples is the Andhra Pradesh, and some of the women farmers are here at the conference and spoke yesterday. And I think the important thing is that it starts with women farmers at the grassroots, and they have some official support. We know there are right-wing governments in India, in the UK, and everywhere. You know, as the sister from Via Campesina said, the governments are often with the big business, almost all of them. But in Andhra Pradesh, the women do have a support from local officials, and it would be really good to mention them, you know, in forums like this, because they're doing fantastic work, and they described how they're training other farmers. The women work in self-help groups, and not only for healthy food, but also for bigger crops, and they're also training the men and have got the men on board, and have self-help groups that are dealing with things like domestic violence. So it's like a massive change in society. And I think it's just important to mention where we are winning and how we can learn from that. And I know that, they've been speaking at some workshops here. And I just wanted to say that everything is political. And as the sister from Germany said, anything can be co-opted, whether it's the women's movement, the black movement, the farmers' movement. So we're always fighting against being co-opted and being sucked up into government. But we're also fighting for governments to work for us and implement the policies that we want. So thank you to the speakers and for this forum.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had a few more questions. I think, is that a direct point? Because, yeah, it is a bit of a discussion. So let's have a direct response. Can we have a direct response to that first? And then we'll go to the other questions.
Direct response?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So on the policy level, we have a Feeding Britain kind of thing. I don't know if you heard about the Sustainable UK, and I'm sure Jyoti and all of you are aware of that, right? That's why we need to work together. So England is one of the countries, soil is fantastic. We can grow a lot. You don't need to import tomatoes from Spain or things like this. So much thing you can do. Anyway, we're not solving here. It's important to get the issues around working together as a unity as a farmers and even the home gardening. I know someone in Midlands, they do 50, 60 vegetables and this distribute across the town. It's so many things happening around that, just a question of coordinating that. The most important thing is the Feeding Britain is a nice report last time. I think Patrick was here yesterday. They're trying to do that. It's good. So many things like that happening. So I think there's something's possibility working together as a framework. That's my comment. And one comment on the Ethiopian. There's any significance on you eat food together, right, on the table, one plate, and you have a sharing kind of thing. It's amazing. How do you want to comment on that? It looks like to me the soul, like particularly in Ethiopia, the food around the table and you're sharing together. It's one bread shared together. Is there any background for that or anything historically? It's quite good cultural concept. I'm just trying to learn from you. What is the significance of? It's enjoyable, right, with the family. Anything you wanted to comment on that?
Okay, can we take the questions from the back? Yeah, I thought you were going to make a direct response about the Andhra Pradesh natural farming women.
Yeah, thanks so much for all of the presentations. It's really interesting and really inspiring. I have one comment and one question. So my first comment is about crisis of capitalism. I've been hearing for a good 20 years or so that we're in a crisis of capitalism. And I think we have to be careful, because if what we mean is workers are being exploited and the environment's being trashed, that is not a crisis of capitalism. That's exactly how capitalism works. That's the origins, right? Slavery, colonialism, the absolute trashing of the environment through the Industrial Revolution. So, I mean, I think capitalism is doing very well for itself. You know, the big agribusinesses made massive profits all through the pandemic. So let's just be really clear about what we mean. And, you know, yeah, so that's just a thought about crisis of capitalism. And the next thing is, so thanks so much for all of the kind of reminder about the achievements of La Via Campesina. It's so inspiring to hear all of that. And, you know, the UN Declaration is such a huge achievement. But what I kind of see is that it's there, it exists, and that's brilliant, but it's not being implemented in maybe the way that we would want. And we still have this situation where, as has already been said, governments support big agribusiness. In the UK, I've heard trade ministers say, yeah, UK agriculture, it's not really competitive. So they have very recently just put it under the bus in trade agreements. And you see that really, even the NFU here, who are not very much to do with food sovereignty, have been up in arms about the way that agriculture has been sold down the river in trade agreements. So what do we need to do now to get that massive achievement at the UN to shift what is happening at national level, to really get across that importance of ecologically, of food sovereignty? How do we shift the dial kind of nationally? What are the next steps now for, what do we need to do next to kind of forward our aims? Thanks.
Okay. Million, did you want to answer this gentleman's questions? And then Paula, and I don't know, Joe, if you have any thoughts, or Ferdinand?
I mean, I grew up eating together from a single tray. So I have no idea about the origin. And now what we have started is also, to cut the injera into pieces and eating on a plate separately. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say, but I will give the floor to you about UN Drop and UN Drip. And I don't think it's a fair question to only LVC. LVC has managed to push for the production of that document, that agreement, where it's everybody's responsibility to push for that, but I will give you the floor.
No, as I said, I mean, first, like the UNDROP is the acronym for the Peasant Rights Declaration. So when I talk about UNDROP, it's about this, this human rights instrument. But as I said before, this was not LVC alone. When I was speaking about the achievements, I was speaking about the achievements that were done in alliance, with also other constituencies, small-scale food producers, basically, who are mostly also united in the IPC, but also, for example, IUF, International Workers Union. They are not part of the IPC, or at least not yet, and they were also involved in this process. So yes, I agree with you. It's not LVC alone, although the idea was born in La Via Campesina, and then we shared and we struggled together for that. But coming to the point, in terms of next steps and implementation, I would not really agree that it's not being implemented. No, it's a relatively new instrument. I mean, it was approved 2018. After that, immediately a pandemic came. We have been working to implement it. Definitely, even in the pandemic context, UNDROP was already used. For example, in Canada, there is a positive example where workers, land workers, were struggling to get also fair health conditions in a context of pandemic, and they used UNDROP in a court case, and they won, from the landowners, from the employers. There is already, cases where UNDROP has been used positively, being it in court cases, or, if I'm not mistaken, I think in Paraguay it was also used regarding impacts by the use of glyphosate and health impacts. And they also won something. I think it was in Paraguay. I'm not 100% sure, but in Latin America somewhere. UNDROP has been used for, producing different human rights reports on violations in different countries, and this is also used, for example, for the Universal Periodical Review from countries in the Human Rights Council. UNDROP has been used to, put peasant rights in some national laws. Nepal is one example. And right now, we just managed to pass, to get approved, United Nations Independent Experts Working Group. It's something similar to the special rapporteurs on the right, for example, to food, special rapporteur on climate change, and there are different rapporteurs. They are independent, but they are part of the United Nations framework, and we just passed a working group of experts on UNDROP to start working from May this year. And this working group will have a representative from each different United Nations region. And the mandate of this working group is to support the implementation. So I think, considering that this is a relatively new instrument, I think we are on the way. We are on the way to use it more, to implement it more, to demand public policies that defend the rights of peasants, to demand, for example, agrarian reforms in different contexts and so on. If you take, for example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it is not that everything was implemented from one day to another. No, it needs time, and especially in international law, we need time for implementation. So I think we are on the way and we are doing progress. But of course, there's the need for much more. I agree with you, but I would just like not be frustrated, but more like seeing the progress that is being done in the different contexts.
Thank you. So let's wrap up. Ferdinand?
I just wish to make a comment on the example of the Andhra Pradesh community managed farming. We have been in collaboration through online webinars that the 15 Healthy Soil, Healthy Food centers are now borrowing some of the good practices from Andhra Pradesh, especially the training of trainers model. And like in my own organization, we train farmers who also go and train other farmers. And for example, one farmer trains about between 10 and 15 farmers, and that's how the practice is evolving. And also the collectives, the use of the women, and in Africa here and in Kenya here, the women groups are quite instrumental in doing community development, and we are using that model. And we're still learning even some of the practices on the biofertilizers and the bioprotectors. We're learning from India. So that is a very good example on creating solidarity and unity and learning from the different practices from the different continents. And I think we'll keep going and pushing forward with that kind of collaboration. Thank you.
So what do you think are the next steps in terms of the Nyéléni process for smallholder farmers and the people in Kenya?
Yeah, I think as Million pointed out earlier on, that events are being organized nationally and regionally, and we will keep on mobilizing farmers at the grassroots so that their voices can be heard more and be translated into policy. It's a struggle, and we have to work together with other networks and other movements, and hopefully this will translate into policy change. Thank you.
Thank you. And final words, Joe?
Yes.
What do you think are next steps?
I hadn't prepared final words, but what I will say is that if there's something to take away from this session is that food sovereignty is revolution, and so if we can create that kind of radical transformation on a personal and on a grassroots and on a policy level, then I think we'll be on our way.
Million?
I think the coming Nyéléni is very, very important. I think we need to do a regional reflection. How this whole concept is difficult to implement. The concept of food sovereignty has to be grounded, and we have to come at a global level in India, and also really reflect on what has passed and also for the future. How do we redefine ourselves? I think it's very much important, and AFSA will be very keen to be actively participating.
Paula?
Yeah, I can only repeat myself, know that, any global process, and especially a popular process, need the grassroots. And I think here in the UK, you have a very good starting point for this process in terms of, bringing about the transformation, the radical transformations that we need from this food sovereignty perspective, because, it is, you don't have this, like this space, the Oxford Real Farming space, conference space in all countries. Even in Europe, you don't have this. So you have already a very good starting point. Make use of it, expand this network, come together, elaborate your proposals and bring them, convey them to the regional process and later on to the global process, because we need also the visions from the North. Food sovereignty is not only about Global South, it's about the entire world, the entire popular classes globally, thinking together, building together, and giving hope to humanity.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you to all our speakers. And no one will hear you without a mic.
Mic.
You need it to be mic'd up.
Just to add to what Joe was saying about the challenges to food sovereignty in the UK, is the deregulation of genetically modified organisms. And the Food Standards Agency is currently consulting on that, and it's the window to respond to the consultation ends on Monday. So in the spirit of transforming challenges to opportunities, persuading people to respond to a consultation over the festive season, we're opening up a space in this conference for people to encourage current people to respond to the consultation, and it will be at 1 o'clock at St Aldgate's Tavern in the upstairs in the Blue Room. So it's not a question obviously, but an invitation to people in this room to come along and find out more, or just respond directly to the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't need that. And for anyone else who's interested to get involved, join the Land Workers Alliance, and there's a session on this afternoon as well about the UK food sovereignty movement, and for those people interested in trade, we also have a session on trade this afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Globalize the struggle.
Globalize hope.
Globalize the struggle.
Globalize hope.
Globalize the struggle.
Globalize hope.
Viva!
Viva!
Thank you. You are most welcome.